Good morning, everyone. Thank you to ACTRA Toronto for having us here, and thank you to TIFF as well for inviting me to moderate this panel, which I'm very excited about. We're going to have a time for a short Q&A afterwards, so please do get your questions ready. So I'm so thrilled to be here today to talk about authenticity in representation of Asian characters on screen with Andrew Phung and Jasmeet Raina. So Andrew is an actor, comedian, writer, and host best known for his work as Kim Chi on the hit TV series Kim's Convenience. He won 5 consecutive Canadian Screen Awards in the category of Best Supporting Actor in a Comedy Series for his work on that show. His recent credits include Winona Earp, Events Transpiring, and Last One Laughing on Amazon Prime. He's the co-creator, star, and executive director of the comedy series Run the Burbs. He recently received his 2nd consecutive CSA nomination for Best Lead Performer Comedy, and we'll learn next week whether he wins that or not. And he can be heard regularly on CBC Radio's Because News and The Debaters. Jasmeet is a writer comedian based out of Toronto. Stemming from producing sketch and skit-based content on YouTube for nearly a decade, much of Jasmeet's content has focused on idiosyncrasies of the South Asian community and his upbringing as a South Asian Canadian. In addition to amassing millions of views on his channel and various online platforms, Jasmeet completed the Sundance Institute YouTube Creators Intensive Program in 2016 and has been passionate about going beyond his YouTube sketches and creating everyday character-driven stories that place unheard voices in the middle of their narratives. Most recently, Jasmeet launched The Very Funny Late Bloomer, his first full foray into television with an 8-episode series that was released as a Crave original to great acclaim. So I'd like to welcome them both on stage now.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Jasmeet, this is the first time we met, man.
It is,
Finally get to meet and hang out, man.
Yeah, totally.
It's an honor.
Yeah.
Outside of Zoom. So I just wanted to thank you both for being here. I just wanted to start by saying that Real Asian was founded 28 years ago by TIFF's own Anita Lee, the Chief Programming Officer. And because back then there was literally no place that you could watch Asian stories on screen or anywhere. So it's amazing to be up here on stage with the two of you, two Asian executive producers. So I'm really looking forward to just managing your conversation. But I just wanted to paint a little picture of what it was like when I was growing up watching television. So I'm just realizing after talking to Andrew just before this how much older I am than you. Because when I was growing up...
Yeah, but Asian don't raisins. It's all good.
That's right. Oh,
right?
Thank you.
Asian women between the ages of 19 and 65, they look the same, right? And then 65, they get the Gucci handbag, right?
I think we've all seen that comic. Yeah. Okay, well, anyway, I just wanted to let all of you younger folks know that when I was growing up, there was, we were limited to like a Calgon commercial or, the Chinese butler on this soap opera called Falcon Crest. Does anybody remember that? Okay, great. Thank God I'm not alone. So in the 90s, I remember how excited I was because there was a comedian named Margaret Cho who made she was really popular on the circuit, and they made a TV series around her stand-up act called All American Girl. And so it ended up, let's just say it was a disaster. She had very little agency over that show beyond just providing them with the material. I think it was criticized for not only not being funny, but also being, perpetuating stereotypes. So I wanted to talk to Andrew and Jasmeet a little bit about, because you're not familiar with that though, the fact that, she felt such a burden that afterward that, she had failed her community as the first to have an opportunity like that, and what it was like for you when you were growing up. What sort of influenced your creative processes and when you're writing your stories?
Yeah, it's a big question. The show was before your time, right? Yeah. And the same for me. Like I think I've heard about it since, and it didn't resonate the same way. But like, yeah, do you feel a burden? Do you feel like carrying?
I think so. I think I definitely I don't know. I don't think I pay attention to it, but I know it's there. Like I know there's like an expectation that's there, and I think there's always. I've always felt like there's a high expectation. I feel like when I was on YouTube, it was you know, I have like a lot of creative control to do whatever I wanted, and so I get to make things exactly how I want. And then so when you're heading into like a new venture or a new industry, like you have to learn how to like, you know, accommodate yourself to like those structures, but also change those structures, and then try to do what you want to do as well. So, but that expectation, I think that pressure is still always there. I think just I was like luckily enough. I felt like I had such a great run on YouTube, and for the most part, the reception was always positive. So everyone was like, "Yeah, like we love everything you do here." So I was like, "Okay, I still have to like translate that over into this new industry, and it might be like a little bit of a transition period where I'm like still learning." I was learning a lot while I was doing season 1. So yeah, I think that was just always on the back of my mind was like, okay, I have like a lot of expectation to live up to, and I have to like just do the best that I can, because yeah, I don't want anything to come across like flat or offensive or as if I'm like doing my people wrong or anything like that. So yeah, that's always it.
Yeah, doing your people wrong. Yeah, that's one. Yeah. So like I'm gonna make this like a boy band analogy, because I started with Kim's Convenience, which is like, I'll call it like the Backstreet Boys, and so because there was 6 of us, I didn't feel as much pressure, and because the pressure was mainly on Paul Sun Young Lee and Jean Yoon, who played Appa and Amma, and more so on Andrea Bang and Simu Liu, who were the children. I got to be the best friend. I got to roll through, be the hurricane that came through a scene, jokes, get out of there, right? So there wasn't pressure because it was shared amongst us all. I felt it a bit coming into Run the Burbs, because I co-created with my co-creator Scott Townend, who's here today. Started it, executive produced it, so I started feeling the pressure, but then I would share it with the writers in the writers' room. I shared it with them because we had a really diverse writers' room. We had 2 cultural consultants that came on the show, a Vietnamese cultural consultant, a South Asian cultural consultant, who was also a food consultant. Also, the best part was the Vietnamese cultural consultant is my cousin. And he didn't get the job because he's my cousin. He got the job because he's a professor of refugee studies. So he's way more qualified than I am. He's the kid at family gatherings that everyone, like all the aunts and uncles, should be talking about. But they see me and they're like, "Oh, Andrew's on TV though, right?" But he was like, "Yo, but he was like 9 degrees, right?" So I felt it then, but I tried to share it as much as possible. And what I learned working with Vin is that, and it really helped, is it's not just about, we always hear getting it right, but you can't get it right for all Asians because we're all different. And even within it, because like, I remember there's a clip from season 1 of Run the Burbs where my wife is trying to learn Vietnamese, and I'm interacting with her, and I'm like, "I'm Mr. Vietnam, I know all the Vietnamese phrases," and she's like, "What's the term for aunt?" And she's like, "There's 5 of them," and I'm like, And someone's, you know, there's someone was just like, "Wait, there's 5 of them," right? Like, and they were Vietnamese as well. And then another Vietnamese was like, "You don't know that?" And I'm like, but even within the Vietnamese community, they're like, "Did you go are you Vietnamese from Vietnam? Or are you Vietnamese from like Toronto? Or are you Vietnamese from Calgary? Or Vietnamese from Texas?" Those are all different Vietnamese, right? So in that moment, I realized the pressure was off. I can only be the best version of myself and no one else. So, that's, you know, that's I think if Nick Carter had done that in his solo career, he would have had better results. If you remember Nick Carter's solo career, we are of a certain age, okay?
Okay, I don't get that reference.
Yeah, no, that's okay. It's cool.
But okay, I'm really struck by hearing the 2 of you, how much power, how much agency you had in the creation of your own shows to even be able to talk on this level about Vietnamese, and also just meeting your show, you know, the different portrayals of Punjabi diaspora in those characters. Because I mean, to bring it back to All American Girl, I know that you know, Margaret Cho had very little control over, you know, what was on in the show. The cultural consultant was there, but I think I recently read that, one of the things that consultant said was, I think you're not Asian enough. I think you should use those chopsticks and then put them in your hair. Like that was an anecdote that was.
Like, who was the cultural consultant? Was it like a white dude who spent a lot of time in like Asia? Was like, I'm super Asian. Just came
There
over.
were not a lot of Asians on that set, from what I meant.
Yeah.
I don't want to just talk about that, but I did want to, just to contrast that with, what Jasmeet was saying, but you had all the freedom on YouTube, and I wondered when you were then brought into sort of a studio atmosphere, how much, like, you can still see all of the three-dimensional characters that you've been able to create, but did you have some restrictions? Did you feel constricted?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just on YouTube, I'm just like, oh, like this person's great for this. Just come be in my thing, like it's just easy to like put someone up there and shoot wherever you want, however you want. And there's no like, location budget limit, union and stuff like that. Not to knock on any of those. Those are all great things, but like if you don't have that on YouTube. So I think it was definitely a challenge. And a lot of the main cast actually was not ACTRA. We had to look outside of the union to find these people because it's just like the people weren't there in the union. And I think there's just like there's a gap. Like there's a lot of great actors that we look for that are in Punjabi television, film, stage arena that just have no idea about ACTRA. They have no idea.
But you can bring them into the union now, right?
We brought them into the union, but it's just like they didn't know about ACTRA. They didn't know about the unions, and so there's definitely this huge like divide where it's like I felt like we had to like bridge two different cultures and kind of bring them together, even though they're part of the same industry. So I mean, the dad on my show, like we tried to audition a lot of people, but it was just like no one really understood the Punjabi nuance, how to speak Punjabi. There was a lot of like Indian actors that did apply for those roles, but like either they weren't Punjabi and we're trying to speak Punjabi, but it just didn't feel right. And I think another thing I really wanted was if there was going to be a turban wearing character on the show, ideally I would have liked them to actually be turban wearing actors because like it's like, okay, we're now sort of going to get the chance to play ourselves. So the dad himself is like, a turban wearing Sikh man. And he's like this OG TV host from back in the day on Vision TV. Yeah, he's a legend. And he hated me, actually, because I made fun of him on YouTube. I did a whole parody of him. So I was like very scared to meet him the first day. And he didn't want to do it, but his kids convinced him. And then eventually he had a good time. And then the mom, actually, it was a very specific dialect of Punjabi that I don't think has ever even been heard on film or TV. It's like a northern dialect. It's a Kashmiri Punjabi, or it's also called Bahari. And my mom is Kashmiri Punjabi, so that's like a dialect that I know like 3 or 4 different dialects of Punjabi because there's just so many dialects. And my mom spoke a specific one, so I really wanted that dialect to be in the show. But even within the Punjabi actors of not even in ACTRA, there was no actors that could do it. So I literally just but the mom is my first cousin, and I just was like, I'm putting you in acting classes, and I threw her in acting class for like 6 weeks with an acting coach, and she used to do theater when she was in India, but then she got married and had kids and became a Punjabi mom, and so abandoned all of her dreams. But I was like, no, I really want you to do this. I saw something in her, so I put her in acting classes. So it was like that was like the case with everybody, even Sunny. Sunny's like just this random guy that I found on Instagram that is actually Sunny, like in real life. He has like a perfume business. He works trucking, security. Like he was like, did you just write me? And I'm like, I just think it's just meant for you. So like almost all the actors we had to find just like street casting, just based off of what we saw, and I just wanted to kind of bring them in and just it's unfortunate that there isn't people that like fit the exact. I'm very picky with exactly what I want. And I think the more nuanced it is, the more relatable it is, and the more people feel that it's real. And so, yeah, I didn't want anybody like faking an accent, faking a language, like no knock on them, but I just really wanted it to feel like this is like who these people are. So, yeah, that was that. And it just took time, like, because it's obviously you have no time when you're making a TV show, and then you're also just like fighting these structures that are in place, going outside of the union, like. Even the language barrier, like there's a CRTC rule or something like that. If your show's a part of the union, you can't have more than 15% non-English, and there were some episodes that had 40% Punjabi because like a dad-centric episode, so we had to like fight that rule, but there was no committee to even fight it, so they had to create a committee, and that was like a 3-4 week process, and we had to go to camera in like 2 days, and we didn't have approval to have Punjabi, but I'm like, I'm gonna film it, and I'm gonna hope that it works out. So it's like you're literally trying to put together a show, but you're also actively like fighting these systems and this infrastructure that I don't think has been, it's not really supportive of a show like this, and it's not, there's no like fault really, it's just there's just never been a show like this that really wants to push these boundaries. So, I mean, there's so much stuff, you know, like even, you know, there's like hair and makeup, but like we had to have like a turban department because no one's ever had like a guy that ties turbans on set. We had to have a sari specialist, a girl that ties saris. So it was like, and then that takes time, you know. Sometimes they're like, all right, you have 5 minutes to change, and then you got to be back on set. I'm like, I have to tie like a double plug. For anybody knows what a double plug is, it's like a big, huge turban that takes like 20-25 minutes to tie. And I'm like, it's not going to happen in 5 minutes. So it's like, you know, as we were even doing the show on production, like people were like, oh, we didn't like take into account the time that it'll take for like all these little things. So it was like a very kind of messy process, but I think it was like needed. And so like everything just felt chaotic during prep and production, but in like a good way. We still pulled it off. We were just going through a storm the whole time. Yeah.
Amazing. You're just breaking ground like the whole way through. Angie, to bring it back to you, there's so many different tangents we could go in, but do you want to talk about your specific your characters? Or I don't think we've seen a family like yours, you know, Asian, South Asian, and
yeah, like from the beginning of the development, it was always going to be an Asian, South Asian family. Now, that never changed in any level of development because I wanted to be representative of the suburbs. I want to see our families in the burbs, especially second generation, because we see a lot of, like when we do see content that represents us, it's often the immigrant story and the struggle, but like I want to show that next level, and I got that idea on Kim's. I was like, well, what would happen if Kimchi had kids, and when Jung and Janet, you know, if they have families? So that was the direction I want to go into, because I think it's interesting trying to showcase culture, but through the lens of someone like me who speaks the language poorly and doesn't know the traditions and only knows them half-heartedly from like memory, and then has to Google most of it, right? So like Raki Morzaria, who plays my wife Camille on the show, was talking about this ceremony she was doing with all her cousins, and they were like arguing because they forgot the tradition, and they were arguing about what it was, and they're like, well, what's this candle for? Well, let's FaceTime my mom. And they like FaceTime family members to get the tradition right. So that was the angle we wanted to go into, and similar to your experiences, like there's systems in place where we had to like bring on cultural consultants, figure out how we were going to do certain things, like. We do a Holi episode in season 3, and that's the Festival of Color, where you throw powder, and then the venue told us, oh, you can't throw the powder. We're like, oh, we can't throw the powder for a Holi episode? Well, that's the thing of the episode, right? So we had to figure it out. But it's along the way, and I think you're right. It's like along the way you hit like a little bit of a speed bump and barrier, and you got to just figure it out. Because it hasn't been done before. Like when I was casting my mom and dad on the show, Christine and Pierre, who are incredible. If you watch the show and see my parents, if you grew up with me, you like, those aren't your real parents, because they're so good. But I remember Pierre was my stand-in on Kim's Convenience. So he had a little bit of acting experience, and Christine was a singer, but had previously done a lot of banking commercials. They love Asians for commercials for banks, right? And so they auditioned, and audition was stiff. Their audition was stiff, but I was like, these are my parents, and I brought it to the network, and the CBC had some concerns. They're like, well, they feel really stiff, and I said, let me tell you something about Vietnamese parents. All right, they're not outgoing, razzle-dazzle people. Okay, they are stiff, they are cold, but I'm telling you, we can get it up. What we ended up doing was. We look at ways of supporting the talent. So we brought on an acting coach for them for the week, someone who was also Vietnamese and could work with them, right? And the product of the show also wasn't just representing on the screen. I wanted to elevate Asian performers, that when they left the show, they had these skills where they could take it on. They're like, you know, they could go on to more roles, right? And that's the way I felt about my kids on the show, Rowan Pacino and Zariah Wong. It's like, if you watch the show, they just like have an upward trajectory. they learn comedy. So in the off season, I was encouraging them to take improv classes, and then we brought on an acting coach for them just to work and help them become actors and performers. Because oftentimes when we book a role on set, we're put on, but we don't even know how to read a call sheet. Like, I don't know about you, but like the first time I got a call sheet, I'm like, what are these names? Why do I need to know where the hospital is? Like, what is this? This is embarrassing, but I kid you not. The first time I got a call sheet was like for this independent movie. I drove to the hospital because I thought that's where we were shooting. And because I didn't know how to read a call sheet. So the goal of the production was to elevate the performers. Yeah.
It's amazing. I think, so I'm obviously an older generation from you. I think I used to be happy just to see an Asian face on the screen who had dialogue that wasn't the butt of the joke. And Jasmeet, you've talked about how in The Office they always misrepresented sick characters. So now, can you talk about in Late Bloomer the range of identities from the Punjabi diaspora that you have on the show, or?
Yeah, I mean, similar to you. Whenever I think I was just excited to see a guy with a turban, I was like, oh my God, there, look! And even if you're just like passing in the background, I remember like James Bond movies always had like a distinguished sick gentleman walking in the background. Almost every James Bond movie, I was like, man, these guys know, like, they're representing for us. Even if they didn't have dialogue, they just walk by. I think even Christopher Nolan had one, and Dark Knight, just walking in the background in the hotel where he buys like the hotel. So it was just exciting to see turbans on screen. But then they started getting dialogue, but it was like weird. Like, yeah, the guy from The Office, it was like they just like plopped a turban on him, and he didn't even have a beard, and he's like, I was like, come on, man, like you guys put a little more effort into that. But yeah, sorry, what was the question? I just was excited about my childhood.
The turban is in the background.
Just in the background. But like, oh my God, look.
Just to talk about that, the fact that the representation of different types of different parts of Punjab.
I think it's like there's different characters that I wanted to show, right? Like there's obviously me, I'm playing a version of myself in the show, and then there's a dad who wears a turban, and I wanted a very like stoic, sick dad, like, you know, which is like every sick dad almost. It's just like a stoic, you know, I'm about my business, I take care of my family, I do this, but isn't like emotionally open and can't connect. And like, you know, I had some like people kind of raise something with me. It's like, oh, aren't you scared that you're showing like a stereotypical like Punjabi father? Like, and I'm like, well, nobody's really seen this, and this is actually like what, you know, my dad was like, or a lot of people's dads are like. So I don't think I'm just keeping it real, you know, like I'm not, I don't think, and I think people misuse stereotype in a not always the best way. Like, that's not a stereotype. That's like, I'm doing my best to like show what an authentic Punjabi character looks like, because I also wanted to give him like very real values. Like in episode 6, he goes out of his way to help like a new Punjabi couple that has just come to Canada, and he's like setting them up, giving them money, and inviting them over to dinner, getting one of them a job. And it's like, that's the type of person he is. He's like very selfless in that way. And so, you know, there's a wide range of that. And I think when people say like you're stereotyping, I think it's like, okay, maybe you're playing on a trope, and you're not necessarily tuned in with that community, and like your outside perception of what that person is like, that's a stereotype. But if you're like in the community and you're experiencing it, that's just like reality. And so I wanted to show reality, and obviously the character is going to grow from there. But then I also wanted to show like, I didn't, you know, a lot of people, there's this pressure that, you know, if you're going to show a certain type of person from a certain demographic in a show that hasn't been shown before, we want to show them in the best light. And I think that's also true, but I think we should also show like real people as well. The brother-in-law on the show is like this really corny realtor that like makes TikTok videos, and he's like dancing to sell houses. And he's just like, just everything about him is like, if I knew this guy in real life, I'd just be cringing all the time. And I was like, I just want to write a character like that too. So like a guy that wears a turban but is also just a cornball, just a total goof, and I wanted to show that as well. So it's like there's range in the types of people that we see in real life. So we should be able to depict that as well on TV. So not everybody has to be like perfect. You know, if you're part of a circle, you know, not every Indian actor, every indie role that you write is perfect. It's just like, it's just real. And I think a lot of people have fun. I know Sukhman, who played Just Breathe, had like a lot of fun playing that character. And like, I think that's what it's about. It's like, yeah, you just want people to have fun. Like, I don't always want to play like a good, sick character, you know, or anything like that. It's like, I want to play everything. On YouTube, I used to play everything. So it's like, similarly, I want that kind of philosophy to continue.
Yeah,
also,
that's such a luxury, actually, because you do have a full show, full of characters. You can depict many different types of characters without worrying about stereotyping. So I wanted to ask Andrew, actually, you know, where late bloomer kind of reflects my experience growing up as a child of immigrants. Yours reflects, you know, my adult reality, and so of a contemporary sort of mixed family. So trying to instill pride in both cultures in your children. So I just want to to ask you if you could talk about how long you've had this idea for the show. Was it you know? Did you think about it even before you got married, or at some point in your career? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I didn't think. I got it while making Kim's, because like before Kim's, I didn't think I was going to be on TV. Like I was a hard stage actor, improv comedy live. Like I booked Kim's Convenience out of an improv show. Like I was doing the Edmonton Fringe, and if you've ever been to a Fringe festival, it's like a theater festival of new works, one person shows. I was doing a 2-person improv show where we would interview an audience member about their life and make it into an improv, into a movie on stage. We had like rehearsed 12 fights, so we'd be like fight number 2, and we would do fight number 2 as whatever characters we create. And Ins Choi came to my improv show, and I'm like, yo, why'd you come to my show? And he's like, you're the only Asian guy here. And there's a poster of me like from like Die Hard with a gun and like a white tank top and blood on my face. And 6 months later, I was literally making Kim's Convenience. I never saw myself there. That's why it's so exciting. It was so exciting being a part of the Asian revolution with Kim's, Fresh Off the Boat, and Crazy Rich Asians. That's it. 3 things started a revolution amongst Asians in the arts, but that's all. We were so desperate for it. And I didn't get the idea for Run the Burbs until like the 3rd or 4th season of Kim's Convenience. And then I was chatting with Scott, my co-creator, and we were pitching this idea of like kind of taking my family, because we don't show this generation of parents of color. We don't show we see immigrant dad on screen, immigrant mom, but we don't see this generation. And like I think we parent in a different way. We parent with the mantra of telling our kids we love them, because we didn't hear it growing up, right? And so I tell my kids I love you like 30 or 40 times a day, like to the point where they're like, we get it, Dad, yeah, leave me alone, right? But if I heard it, I'm like, what were those words, right? And so I had the idea while making Kim's, and the show was put into development, and if you know the end of Kim's, it came quite suddenly. But we thought we were making a 6th season. We were ready for it. And the first production schedule, Run the Burbs, had me making Kim's Convenience for 3 months, having 1 week off, and then making Run the Burbs for 3 months. And now looking back, I'm like, I would have died. It would have been the hardest thing. But
Blessing
also,
in disguise.
Yeah, but also it would have been really exciting to have Kim's and Run the Burbs on at the air at the same time. Right, to have both of those shows going, because I think they show different perspectives, again, of like our community can look and do different things, right? And I think that's the exciting part of where we're at right now. We get to show our communities in different ways, in all the ways we exist, because there's so many ways, right? We're all different just from our experiences and our lived experiences.
As much as I love Kim's, I do have to say that your show, where you're constantly, your parents are speaking to you in Punjabi and you're responding in English, was just all of our immigrant children realities. So I mean that's just a comment. So thank you for I think the show that I was waiting for my whole life, both of you. So I just wanted to turn to some unique challenges related to Asians on set. early on, Kim's makeup didn't know how to deal with Asian skin. Is that something that I've read?
Yeah. My skin was okay because like I think me and Simu had an okay time, but I know with Jean and Andrea there were struggles with Jean had a lot of issues with how it was, and the color wasn't right. I had more issues with my hair. That was the issue. Yeah, like they. But that's any set. It wasn't even just Kim's. Like a lot of times, I had to like teach them how to do my hair, teach them to work with Asian hair, because our hair is different, right? And so, but I will say on Run the Burbs, all 3 seasons, it's just I did my own hair. It just was like I'm gonna do it. It's easier. So like because I remember. The first day, the hairstylist was doing my hair, and she was just sweating because she's just like trying to she's like, what is this? And I was like, nah, it's good. I'll do it. Boom, 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 boom. I was out of there. I'm like, just as an executive producer, I knew it would only take 7 minutes for me to do my own hair. And I needed
I did my own hair too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Jasmeet, actually, in Late Bloomer, I guess hair and makeup had to go outside of the union to tie turbans and put on.
Yeah, we had to get this guy named Harry that like ties turbans for weddings, and because there's just nobody in hair and makeup that like knows how to tie. Like I remember like even finding space, because like sometimes when you tie a turban, you have to like stretch the fabric, and the fabric can be like 6 meters, 5 meters long, and so you have to find a long enough hallway, and there's not really that much space. You're like in the middle of like the laneway in the studio, and there's like people walking by, but people would gather around and like watch, because they've never seen anything like this, like stretching fabric, wetting it and then tying it. Like literally crew members or other actors or even producers would come and just like watch it, because they're like, we've never seen anything like this. And to me, it's like so normal. And so I was like, oh yeah, that's a constant reminder. I'm like, yeah, people don't know about that. And even in episode 4 of the show, it's about the turban. And the opening scenes, you see like the dad putting the turban on, the younger version of me, and then me tying it on as well. And I just remember people being like, I've never seen that on TV. Like, we didn't even know. We thought you guys just like put it on your head. Like, and I'm like, that's crazy. Like, to me, that if somebody said that to me 20 years ago, I'd be like, all right, cool. But like, still people are saying that now. I was like, that's wild. That just means that, yeah, it just these things feel normal to me. But I think through even making the show, I realized how foreign a lot of these like simple little things are to a lot of people. Even like we have this thing called the salai, which is like tucks your hair in, and some people are like, oh, is that your dagger? And I'm like, no, this is like, what? No, this is like for my turban. So it's like there's so much. You're like, oh, okay. You're like, people have no idea about your culture. Like half the people on set thought we were Muslim before we even started the show, and kept calling the Gurdwara, which is a Sikh temple, the mosque. So I was like, we're just playing this game of like when people will catch on, like, and people were like, yeah, so when we were shooting at the mosque, I was like, oh man, we just didn't bother correcting them because it was funny to us until they actually got to the Gurdwara.
And then they feel bad.
And then they're like, ooh, and then they're like awkward, and
yeah,
but no, we just poke fun at them. It's all good. Like they understood eventually. Yeah.
I think that's the gift of being creators, and I it's an honor to be able to have made a show, and now I'm telling you, people, like, I gotta ask something like, what's your advice? I'm like, start making your own work, start writing your own ideas, because in order for us, and we talk about representation, the reason why we weren't getting it right before is because we weren't in control of our ideas, and now when we're in control of it, we can add the specificity. And what I love about it is like, you're saying they didn't know, but now they know, and that's the joy of the work we make. People didn't know, and now they know, and they're invited into our home. That is the greatest honor we can have, to make something where we invite you into our home as a guest, and they can sit and watch and be like, oh. And I loved it because when we did Lunar New Year episodes, we got to show that tradition. But my favorite comment was like, oh, it's so relatable because my family fights like that at Christmas. And I'm like, exactly, right? At the end of the day, the drama is the relatable thing, right? But how we show it is specific to us. But we will find moments of relatability with any audience, and that's what I love, to see the changing of the tide of that.
Oh, that's so amazing. I mean, were there compromises that you had to make on your shows culturally, or like you? It sounds like you both had total control.
Yeah, I think the only compromises are just like you just never have enough time or money.
Time and money.
That's pretty much it. Yeah. So ideally I would have loved to have done way more, show more locations, be able to shoot in Toronto. Like I think that's like those like little things we pulled it off. We shot in Hamilton, the locations, but there's only so many Indian restaurants.
Everyone shoots in Hamilton right now, man.
it's just I'm trying to get a feel for like what it feels like to be self-sufficient. But we did the best we could. But I think that was the only limitation. But in terms of like authenticity, I really fought hard to make sure that we had the right pieces, and even like the people that we worked with, the writers, Chaps is here. He's an EP. Buljinder, Ricky, he did a lot as well to really fight and get the right pieces going. Even music, music was a big thing. A lot of the music that's
expensive.
It's expensive, yeah. And a lot of the music they have in the like whatever the databases. It's like if you search Indian, it's like.
Yeah,
it's like really
APM, yeah.
This is bad. This is really bad.
It's the same with Vietnamese music.
Yeah. It's like I know a white dude that's like in his 40s created this, like a commercial jingle, and it's like the Indian sound, It's like that's not what it is. So we had to like, finesse all sorts of deals with like people in India to get specific music that's exclusive to the show and to the experience. Episode 7, the Rokao, the engagement. There's a lot of like old classical music in there, and just like shout out to Chaps. I don't know how he did it.
But how'd you get it? Because like we try to get old Vietnamese music. Who owns the rights? Like that's
it. Yeah.
Well,
we had to prove that it was like, man. He can probably speak more to it, but we had to prove that it was in the public domain, and then you have to like get these books from India that are like in libraries that people have never heard of, books people have never heard of from professors.
You just made it up. You just made up some documents. I found this letter. Like some burnt edges. It's been dipped in tea. I own it. Let's play it now.
No, it was real. No, it's just like that's another thing. It's like you're doing post-production. You have a mix that's supposed to be finalized that day, and you're still like, and people in India, they very lenient with like their deadlines and getting back to you. So we're like, dude, we gotta like lock this in. They're like, yeah, no problem. It'll be done. And you're just like, so it's just like you're working with people that have different cultural time frames of time, So
Indian Standard Time.
Indian Standard Time is a real thing. So it's just like it's just wild. Like you're just like locking stuff in the very last second you can. And but it's worth it. Like I just didn't want APM music. I wanted stuff that felt real and was authentic. And so that just requires an extra amount of time and stress and lack of sleep and headaches. But it's like worth it, because it's like if we're not doing this, then it's very easy. I understand now why some TV shows like fall into certain traps, because it's like everything's set up against you, and you're not encouraged by anyone really. And again, I'm not blaming anybody. It's just like, the producers are trying to save enough money. The network's just like, yeah, whatever works. And so nobody's really fighting for like the real pieces that make it feel like a real authentic thing, except for you. And in order to fight for those pieces, it just takes a lot of time and a lot of work and a lot of headache. And I get why people don't want to go through that. But I just think it just meant a lot to me, and it means a lot for the people that work on this show to really be like, no, let's make something that stands the test of time and is like true to what we're going through as a community. So yeah.
But that's the first season, because like I went through that in first season. Your second and third season, like you're so much more of a machine. Because like first season it took so long to get the music cleared. By season 2 and 3, we had all of it cleared at the beginning. Like we had a list of like all these Vietnamese songs, Vietnamese hip hop, and then we got to go to other cultures as well. So like, it's like you're changing the system as you go. By season 2 and 3, we had it all. Like I was just listening to playlists of stuff they were sending me. And I remember in season 1, we were trying to get Su Boy, who's like the Nicki Minaj of Vietnam. But when we got her, other artists came. Because when we could get her and she saw the placement of the track, then it was like we could show other people, this is what we were going to do with the music, right? So it gets easier along the way. It's just like those first battles of getting there. But it reminded me of a story. There's a Vietnamese like lullaby, 3 Little Butterflies. And that song is like 100 years old, okay? I put it in the script. My cousin, he's like, yeah, we're good. Legal is like, Andrew, you need to prove. So I looked at who wrote the song. I was like, oh, a writer in 1940. Oh, he was banned in Vietnam. So I now need to find the family descendants of a writer who was banned in Vietnam, his own country, and obviously there was a war in the middle of it. So we tried, and then we thought we had it. And Leo's like, no, it's still not. You still haven't proved that it's in public domain. So we were the music is to Frere Jacques, which is in public domain, but the lyrics we could not clear. So I had to rewrite the lyrics with my cousin, but we were at 26 words in a lullaby. We were able to reuse 4 of the words, and if only 4 words are reused, we were good. And so the episode aired, and Vietnamese kids were like, "Oh man, I remember this lullaby." I'm like, "You don't even know. These aren't even the right words. You don't even know." But then some people were like, "I remember, but it's a little off." And I was just like, "No, your memory is hazy. Like it's the song." But then I did break it down of just like, these are the things you have to go through to even try to get close to it. Like you have to you're fighting just like our own cultural learnings, but then also legally stuff you can and cannot do. But I wish I had your boy in the crew, because he would just found me some documents that would be like, "This song's ours, we're going to use it."
I think we have just a couple more minutes left before I'll turn it over to the audience. So I just, I guess I just wanted to, ask if you had any particular casting challenges for the show. Andrew in particular, I think you.
My kids were an early casting challenge, because you need to cast kids that are half Chinese and half Southeast Asian, half South Asian. That doesn't exist like that, like in the union. So we have to really. There were some kids that were really good, but I'm like, they don't look like me, and that's the concern, right? But then we were just so lucky to find Roman and Zariah, who, if you look at Raki and myself and those two, you're like, oh, I believe that as a family. But I think every step of the way, when it came to cultural specificity, we had to go outside. And we had the same casting director, so Larissa would have to send out casting notices. So we did that for my parents. We did that for my cousins. We didn't do it for my sister, because I saw Kimberly Ann Trong audition for another role, and I saw her last name. I'm like, she's Vietnamese. Put her off to the side. And she got a direct call back to be my sister, and I knew she was my sister even before we did the scene. We were in a Zoom, and we were just chatting. I'm like, that's my sister. She was giving me the goods. She was roasting me. I'm like, that's what I want. Someone gives me the goods. I was like, how old are you? She's like, how old do you think I am? I'm like, I don't need to know the answer to that. We're good.
Oh, that's awesome.
But with my cousins, in Vietnamese culture, the Vietnamese in California are at another level of like, they have their own Vietnamese community, but it's very much like they love like the party scene, like especially my age. I got these cousins in Cali, who like love wearing white clothes. When they show up to a wedding, they are the party. So we had the 2 California Vietnamese cousins, but we opened up the auditions. Larissa got spammed with so many auditions from the US, from all over North America, from Vietnamese actors saying they had never auditioned for a role that was so specific, like had such character specificity. And I felt that way when I auditioned for Kim Chi on Kim's Convenience. It wasn't like best friend, open ethnicity. It was like specifically they were looking for this character, and we always tried to do that in our character descriptions to give as much detail as possible. So it wasn't a challenge. I actually think it was a gift and a joy to be able to reach out and see new performers. And I'm proud to say that for one of the cousins, he was primarily known as a stunt actor, played a comedic role, and for another cousin, it was her first credit in ACTRA to reach out and come do it. So it's like I find it as an opportunity. It's hard, but it's an opportunity. You brought 3 or 4 more people into the union that weren't there before, and they're going to be booking work, right? So yeah, it was a challenge, but also a gift.
I think Jasmeet, you already talked a little bit about your casting challenges. Right. Okay. So I'd like to open it up to the audience. Any questions back there? Black outfit. Yeah. I can't hear.
2, 3. Got it.
I can't see.
My question is for Jasmeet. Jasmeet, how challenging was it to get this show greenlit, considering we've never seen a Punjabi Sikh on the main poster as a main character? And how much of the story did you have to change to satisfy the streamers' audience as well at the same time?
Did everyone hear that question? Okay.
So I thought the show was going to be made in like 2018, 19. That's when I wrote it and was like, and started pitching it. And so the good thing about Crave and Bell is that they're super cool with me doing whatever I want. Luckily they never had any notes for me. They were like, thumbs up, awesome. They've always been super supportive of me. I've been with them I was like a much digital creator for a while with them, so I'm like, they have like a familiarity with my work and my YouTube, so they were definitely pretty chill. I think again the challenge was like just money and time. Like I want to do way more. I want to do more episodes. I want to show more locations, characters, like things, like ideas that I had I just couldn't execute, so I had to like scale back a lot. And that's as like, you know, doing stuff on your own and your own time and doing exactly what you want. That was a bit of a painful process for me. So Bell was great. Before I was with Bell, I was with another network for 2 years. I don't want to name names, but it's another big
There's
network.
only 2 in this country, man. Like,
What's the other maybe big one? And that was like a very challenging experience because they were just, I was with them for 2 years developing this, and it just wasn't going anywhere because I'm very picky with what I want to show creatively, and they, I think, really wanted to kind of mold the show to appeal more to, I guess, their demographics and the prairies or the Maritimes, and I just wasn't about it. So I remember getting in a lot of like arguments with them and conflicts, and I think they were like kind of like weirded out that I was like speaking back to them, because I think a lot of people just were like, oh, I get a show, I can, yeah, like I'll take any no just to like make it. And I didn't give a shit. I was like, if you don't make it, I don't care. I'll go back to YouTube. Like I didn't have that. Like I was like, I can make a show another time. It doesn't matter. I'm not gonna make a show the way you want to make the show. I'm gonna make the show the way I want to make it. So yeah. Don't like conform. If someone's giving you some bullshit notes, don't listen to it. Like I think you know exactly what you want the show to be and how you want it, and don't be afraid. I think a lot of people are like scared they're gonna lose the show. Like I don't know. I just didn't have that. I could care less if I lost it. So I would fight with them a lot, and then eventually after 2 years, we just hit a point where I was like, okay, God, if you're not gonna make the show, give back to me, and I'll go do it somewhere else. And then that's kind of like where we reached the point there. But yeah, so that was like a very interesting, hellish experience for me. I was like scarred by that, and I was like, man, I don't want to ever deal with another network again. But luckily, Bell and Crave, they're like super chill, super cool, to me at least. I don't know if it would be to everyone else, but I think they just really believed in like what I've been able to do on YouTube, and they really like knew me from my YouTube days. I don't think this other network really knew or watched anything I ever did, so they didn't understand. And I think there was always a turnover rate. Like the original execs, when I'd pitched at the other network, they all got fired and replaced by new execs. And these new guys were like, so wait, what is this show? What is it about? Who is this? Like, they didn't care. And then I'd explain to them, and then they got fired and replaced by like new. And I was like, what's going on? Like, why am I just have to like re-explain the show constantly. And so, yeah, I lost like two and a half, maybe even 3 years just going through this development hell where it didn't go anywhere. And then eventually I brought it to Crave, and Crave was like, let's go, let's do it. And so, yeah, I just think just stick to your guns and make it however you want to make it. It might take a little bit longer. Like I said, I always wish, there's a part of me that's like, I wish the show came out like in 2019, because that's where my head was at then. And now when the show, like it came out, like as a creative, I'm like, this feels like a past version of me. But so it's like weird as an artist, you're like, this work feels dated to me, but I think people still appreciate it now because obviously they're experiencing it for the first time. So that's like a personal challenge that I'm always dealing with, but I'm happy that I got to make it how I wanted to make it, with in terms of like creative, the creative freedom that I had, but always would love more time and budget, as anybody else would. Yeah.
And I just want to follow up. Are you asking that question because you're interested as a creator? Yeah, because like your answer brought up a couple great things, great points. They had to have familiarity in your work. So like the big thing is like going out to as many events as possible, making things that people can see, whether it's even shorts. Like yours was YouTube, but is yours YouTube or is it short films? Is it trying to go to festivals? Just trying to be out there as much as possible, because I had the opposite experience with the other network, but it's because they had such familiarity in my work. So I had an 8-month development to green order cycle, which is like the opposite of what you went through, right? But they had familiarity in my work. But I think there's ranges to it, because I think you were firm in your vision and what you wanted. My idea had had room to have input from the network, and that's sometimes what they want. But what never changed was the family. My family and point of view of how the family looked was never going to change. They changed a few neighbors, you know, they changed a few jobs, but they were never going to change the family. So I hope that gives you a range of answers. But I think what comes down to is like, get familiar with the network. Doing stuff like this is great. Going into as many programs as possible, just so they're familiar with your work, because we would always get names pitched to us for directors and writers because they were familiar with them from just seeing them in the community. So I think that's the core of your question. You're a creator looking to make your own work.
Thank you. I think we only have time for one.
No, we agreed. 1, 2. Do it.
Okay.
Good question. Let's go.
Who's moderating here?
I was just wondering, what's the balance with casting? Because you were talking about like your own network, and you're like, my cousin, or you had people you kind of knew, and working with a casting director, or are you working with like people in your community just knows a lot of people? Because right now, for context-wise, I'm making my first feature, and I'm like, I'm struggling, and I don't know if I want a casting director, if I just need a guy that knows a lot of like brown people. So I'm kind of like finding this balance. But it's great to hear your experience. I'm just curious to like balance.
I think it was a bit of both. Like the casting director would, you know, do the call out, and then a lot of people would audition, and I would watch the auditions that they brought forward, and whichever ones I was like, okay, this is good, this works. Like, you know, we'd bring them in for, you know, callbacks and stuff like that. If from that pool I didn't find anybody, then, you know, I'd be like, okay, we got to hit the streets and like try to find our own people. And then some of the people that are in the show, I just knew, I always wanted to cast them in that role. Like, you know, my buddy Babu, who's been on a lot of my YouTube videos, I wanted him to be Avtar in the show. And Sukhman I knew from before. He was in my YouTube videos as well. And he joined ACTRA and he sent an audition through there. So I always had this familiarity with him. And then my mom, obviously being my cousin, and then even Neil is like one of my best friends, and he's a comedian, stand-up comic, and I just always pictured him to play my mixed cousin in the show because he's had a very similar experience growing up as a white Muslim, and so he just brought a lot of real experience. So I think the biggest thing that I was looking for was like, I really wanted all the actors to feel especially connected to the role and to feel like they were bringing a lot of themselves and to be vulnerable with whatever they're portraying in their character. So if it felt real, and obviously if they're good and they're talented, then that was like my biggest thing. Yeah.
Work with a casting director, because it's not just your feature. You want these actors to make 10 more features. So bring them into the system, right? Bring them into the system so that the casting director is like, hey, I just cast so-and-so in this movie. They are fantastic, and they'll get put in more movies, right? So at the end of the day, you still have the control. You still want to get people you meet on the street in. The casting director works for you, right? But then the casting director will now work for them, right? And that's what I would encourage. Yeah. All right, we right here. Yeah.
My question is a little similar to the first one about I'm an actor but also a creator. And one of the things that I also want to do is to make sure that I'm trying to tell more stories that represent people in my life, me and my family. But one of the things I've been running into, and I think part of it is answered by what you said of just make stuff, try to get out there. Like I just finished a short film, I submitted it to this year's Real Asian season. But there's still a part of me, and I don't know if it's imposter syndrome, where it's like there are it feels like only so many opportunities, and it feels like, can I actually break that barrier? And I look at you two and I go, you guys are a great source of inspiration, because I'm like, yeah, they're doing it. They're doing exactly what it is that I want to do. But could it actually really happen for someone who hasn't sort of reached that level of visibility yet, that then may lead to the bigger opportunities? And I'm just wondering if you have any advice in terms of staying the course and building the resilience, and have you ever felt that way, that it's like, oh, will they actually say yes to this? Is anyone actually interested in making this thing that I have an idea for?
You gotta watch Late Bloomer all the way through, because like Late Bloomer is like levels of like self-doubt, man. Yeah. Like
that's real to this day.
It's real, yeah.
As an artist, creative, you're always gonna. I deal with that still to this day.
On the drive here, you're dealing with everywhere you go.
Right now, I don't even know how to answer this question. I'm doubting my answer.
I walk by the bathroom mirror and I look back and I'm like, why are you even here? And I just like walk out, like every single moment of every day. You are not alone in that.
Totally.
Yeah.
I still feel like, you know, people look at me, they're like, oh, you made it, you were on YouTube, you did this, now you have a show. But like, if I go to LA and like, when I try to pitch a show in LA, people are like, I have no idea who you are, I don't know what you do. So you're still like, and you can go on the street and people will be like, oh my God, like, I want to take a picture of you. So you're like a celebrity in certain circles, and then other circles, like, nobody gives a shit you are. So you're like kind of in, I feel like I'm in this weird place where I'm like, I don't know if I've made it yet, but I'm doing something. And I think that's what it is. You stay the course. And this is the biggest thing, you have to be very delusional about, this is key, like, you have to be delusional about the belief in yourself. Like, a lot of people will kind of like discourage and be like, like, you just have to, and not even tell people that you're that delusional about like how much you believe in yourself. Like, keep that to yourself and just really believe that you're able to accomplish it and do it, and then put the work in to do it, and that's it. Like, I just stay delulu. It's so key. Just be absolutely delusional about your success, and you're gonna make it, and all this stuff. And yeah. For sure, yeah. That's like, you're trying to prove him wrong. There's a family trauma thing you're going through. 100%, yeah.
That's a whole other conversation.
That's a whole other one. Yeah, that's tough. I will say we're gonna see some auditions here. Just as someone who watches a lot of auditions, submit 2 auditions. One, how you think we want it, and give us 1 wild card. I love wild card auditions. I don't know about you, but when I got the wild cards, I always went with the wild cards. And the wild card is like, you do the take how you think it would be on paper, and then the other one is like, you just go bonkers with it. One example, we were casting for a real estate agent. She did 1 take, really clean, as a realtor. Her other take didn't change a line of dialogue, but she played it as if she was super into my father-in-law. So her answers were just like, oh, Ramesh. Yeah. Like, it changed, right? And I'm like, yo, she wants to hook up with my father-in-law. That's hilarious that this realtor would be trying to pick him up, but it doesn't change any of the lines, right? So just have fun with the characters if you're auditioning for comedy. Yeah.
That's great. I think that's all the time we have for. So Jasmeet Raina, Andrew Phung, thank you so much for your time. And